over there.
Got him.
Ooh, that was a good game. That was a really good game. Oh, okay. This one's good. Sonic Yao one-shots. Okay. A thumb was all what was heard from inside a dimly lit room. Inside that room, there were two teenage hedgehogs. Shadow cursed in surprise as he found that he, the ultimate life form, was pinned against the wall by his rival, Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic smirked to see his ebony friend's expression. "What? Not used to being the uke?" he said with a charming smirk. "Baker, what do you think you're doing?" was all Shadow could muster. He clenched his naked fist as his gloves have been removed long ago, leaving only his power rings. He tried to force himself out of the Cobalt's firm grip, but it was useless, as the lust in Sonic's emerald eyes deepened, making his grip firmer, starting to hurt the Dark Hedgehog. He was confused. Just a minute ago they were arguing, so why was Sonic acting like this? "I love your voice, Shadow. Please, shall we get started?" the Seam asked, wanting desperately to be inside the other as his excited continued to increase. Okay. He, and only he, knew that Shadow was a virgin, and he was eager to explore that angsty hedgehog's toned body. You'd expect for someone like Shadow to already have been in this situation before, well, vice versa, and would know where this was going. But nope, it was close. As to prove his thoughts, the other merely raised an eyebrow. Unsure of what the other wanted to supposedly get started on. "What are you talking about? This is outrageous. Get off of me," Shadow protested, trying to escape once again. Sonic smiled innocently and got a bit closer, his tanned, bare chest brushing up against Shadow's white, fluffy chest fur, while one of his legs rubbed against the other's groin. Shadow's eyes widened and his cheeks turned a dark pink as he bit his lip to stifle back any possible noises that might escape him from the friction between his legs. Sonic taking mental note of Shadow's distinct reaction. "You like that, huh?" Cobalt teased as he licked the side of Shadow's face seductively. Shadow closed his eyes and turned his face away in embarrassment. This wasn't like the blue speedster, he thought. He hissed as the friction continued with a bit more effort put into it, the one being affected tensing up even more as he couldn't hold back a soft moan. Sonic found this surprising as he didn't think that Shadow would give in so easily. Maybe it's time for the next step, he thought. Shadow inhaled sharply as he felt something fleshy rub against his stomach. He looked down curiously and saw that it was the other's erection. Then gulping nervously in concern for his own safety. "Like what you see?" Sonic taunted. "Have you gone mad?" Shadow asked, his own eyes narrowing as he stared into the others. But all he saw was lust. It was then that he knew nothing he could do would change the stubborn hedgehog's mind. It was also the second time he had been completely powerless. Yeah, he knew he could easily Chaos Spear Sonic out of his way, but he actually didn't want to hurt his frenemy. As Mobians these days so call their not so super close peers. Shadow growled, obviously displeased at the situation, but he decided to go along with it. He hoped that after this was over, they could just pretend like it never happened. Just move on. Just get it over with. After his thinking, Shadow raised his head to look back at the other. He then realized that Sonic all this time had been waiting to see if it was okay, that he didn't and wasn't rushing him. He also noticed that Sonic's eyes were glazed over, probably deep in thought as he just was. Shadow concluded. He sighed and watched as Sonic's ears perked up and his eyes refocused at the sound. "Fine, Faker, but don't think that this will..." No, it's Shadow, sorry. "Fine, Faker, but don't think that this will make us become any more than we are now. Got it? Sonic nodded, but his mouth formed into a small frown as he realized that this is nothing more than a spur of the moment thing for Shadow. But he thought at least Shadow was less nervous and he'd still get to make the sexy hedgehog his. Sonic then gestured over to the queen-size bed, letting go of the other's wrists to actually take hold of his hand. Shadow grunted, feeling as tan, gentle fingers intertwined with his. He didn't even know why they were in his bedroom. As he remembers, Sonic called him wanting to talk, since he was bored. That's the blue hedgehog for you, he thought. His thoughts were cut off as Sonic guided him, letting Ebony lay down first, and proceeding to lie on top of him. As they stared into each other's eyes, Ruby meeting Emerald, no sound was heard but the breathing of the two. Shadow felt Cobalt's breath as Sonic closed his eyes and leaned in to trap their lips in a passionate kiss. Shadow stared, wide open, not at all understanding what feeling was starting to take him over. But after a few seconds, he decided to kiss back and closed his eyes. Sonic grinded against the other, and that caught Shadow off guard. Refusing to break contact, he grunted into the kiss, Sonic instead pulling away and starting to kiss the darker hedgehog's neck and collarbone, trying to take it as slow as possible, or until he couldn't handle it anymore. Shadow moved his head to give the other more access to his vulnerable flesh. He could feel slightly pointing teeth nibble him every once in a while, and a sandpapery tongue lick his collarbone. His ear twitched as he heard Sonic mumble something. He wasn't sure what he said, but he figured it was something dirty. He waited for the foreplay to continue, but it didn't. Shadow opened his eyes, which were shut tightly the whole time. He looked to see Sonic hovering slightly above him, an eyebrow raised in question. Sonic chuckled and kissed Shadow again. I asked if I could put it in. He then gestured to his throbbing erection. He then gestured to his throbbing erection, it already dripping pre-cum.
Jesus.
Shadow blushed once he looked at it and turned away. Sonic sighing in slight impatience and sitting up, his cock now fully visible. And when he wasn't one bit ashamed of it, Shadow pushed himself on his elbows, staring at each other as he thought hastily. He sighed once he got an idea, and the other's ears perked up to listen to the darker hedgehog's answer. No, not yet. Sonic's eyebrows rose once again at the "not yet" part, and Shadow continued. I have an idea, and I may not be ready, but doing this might emphasize the hormones so that we can get started. Shadow air quoted as he got onto his knees and pushed Sonic down on his chest so that he was now lying down. Sonic didn't resist, for he was eager to find out what Shadow was planning. He watched the Shadow put his arms on either side of his hips and lowered his head in between his legs. Sonic's eyes widened, now understanding where this was going. He could feel the other's hot breath on his prick, making it twitch. Shadow watched as Sonic propped himself up on his elbows to watch him, his eyes half-lidded and knowing smirk on his face. Yeah, okay. Shadow blushed and returned to it. His eyes to the twitching organ in front of him. He gave the tip a soft lick and heard the other gasp slightly in response. He smirked and took it into his mouth and then slowly started to take the whole thing and making himself almost gag as he started bobbing his head. Sonic moaned and tilted his head back, panting. He asked, "You sure you haven't done this before? You're really good." I just got a text from my mom. She said, "How are things going?" Okay.
Doing alright.
Going good. Shadow started getting into the hang of things, and he felt a strange sense of accomplishment. His tan cheeks were now a hot pink as he continued his actions, his ears directed towards the other, listening as he occasionally let out a moan or a sigh in pleasure, and his eyes half-lidded, watching as the cock twitched as he licked and sucked it seductively. Sonic felt that he was getting close as he moaned Shadow's name. And I got another text from my mom. Alright. Sonic felt that he was getting close as he moaned Shadow's name, requesting for him to go faster. The other didn't respond after a few seconds, so he decided to take matters into his own hand, literally. Shadow felt a hand wrap around the base of his left ear and looked up in question, but not stopping. He saw that the other's cheeks were bright pink and his ears were swerved to the side. Shadow also noticed that Sonic was clutching the sheets beside him desperately, and he immediately got the message. He smirked and let out a fang grazed the vulnerable skin of the other as a tease, watching as Sonic gnashed his teeth in slight pain. But the force did not subdue. He sighed, noticing as Sonic panted and silently waited for his approval. Shadow nodded slightly, thinking it wouldn't be too bad not to be the one in control for a while. Back onto the soft bedding as he forced the ebony hedgehog to take it all into his mouth until he felt soft skin reaching his hips. He glanced down to see the pained expression of the other. Shadow was looking directly back at him. The eye underneath the ear he was grabbing shut tight as he notably gagged somewhat. Sonic lessened his grip onto the other's ear up slowly. He felt the cool air on his prick as the warm, wet cavern let him, and grunted as he then shoved the other's head back down quite forcefully, thrusting upwards as well. He heard the other groan in reply to his actions, followed by a gag. Sonic thought he should be less careless, but he was almost at his peak and desperately needed this. He closed his eyes and put his other hand to work by grabbing the other ear. He repeatedly thrusted into Ebony's mouth and listened as Shadow grunted and groaned in discomfort. Shadow looked up once again as he heard a gasp from the Cobalt Hedgehog after a short while. He let himself get shoved downwards again, now used to the feeling of something so large in his throat, but this time he felt a hot liquid fill his mouth. He struggled, but then the tan hands holding him prevented him from getting up. He moaned as he felt the seemingly endless stream of fluid fill him up. After a few seconds, he felt the hands leave him, and he immediately sat up, coughing and sputtering. Sonic watched as the other lurched forward and coughed up a large amount of sticky white liquid onto his own hands. Semen, they both thought. Sonic propped himself up on his elbows once again, not taking the eyes off Shadow as the other sat up fully. He smirked as he saw that a trail of sperm had slid down the side of Shadow's mouth, stopping at his chin. Then he looked down and saw that Shadow must have gotten quite excited during their recent activity, as the other's erection was straight up at its full length. Sonic looked back as Shadow averted his gaze. He eyed the small mess he made on the other's fur, now slightly slick forms from sweating. Those words were stuck together. And crawled up to Shadow. He grabbed Shadow's wrist and licked off the tiny puddle of his own essence before kissing the ebony hedgehog.
Okay.
Shadow broke the kiss and bit his lip before asking, "What's next?" Sonic smirked and abruptly pinned Shadow to the bed, almost bumping into the headboard and causing the bed to shake from the sudden action. Sonic, what are you... Shh! Let me handle it, Sonic whispered soothingly as he sat up once again. Turn around, Shadow grunted as he changed his position, now lying on his stomach. What is this? Ah! Shadow yelped as Sonic had grabbed his waist and forced his lower half upward. He felt the other give an approving sound and put his hands on both of his thighs. Sonic! His legs were slowly spread further apart, making his bottom stick up even more. This position is degrading. What the hell are you planning to do? Shadow turned to see a smirk stretching itself across the other's face as he was staring back at him. One of his gloveless hands caressing one of his quiet pulp buttocks. Oh, baby, we're getting into the meat of it now. Lowered himself, his face mere inches away from the other's virgin entrance. Shadow could feel him breathe, his hot breath making him even more excited. Sonic stared, his mouth slightly open and his eyes half lit. He slowly moved forward and buried his muzzle in between the other's cheeks. Shadow gasped as he felt a tongue slowly lick from his testes to the beginning of his tail. Oh, Sonic-oo! Sonic smirked at the...
Sorry.
I know. That's what it said. It's not done. It's so long. There's a lot more. Sonic smirked at the use of his native name in such a way. He could tell that Shadow was in ecstasy, but how his back was arched by how his back was arched and his head was raised. He's never seen this side of Shadow, and to be honest, he loved this side. There was this vibe of innocence that came from Shadow when it involved matters like this, which made him all the hotter. He looked around the entrance again, circling it with his tongue, teasing him. Sonic, please, Shadow moaned, his voice low but pleading. Sonic stopped and began running his fingers across the other's hole. Please, what, Shadow? He said as he played with the short tail of the other. Shadow shivered and let his head fall, looking at the bedsheet beneath him. No, don't do this to me, Sonic. Don't you dare put me in that position. What do you want me to do, Shads? Okay. All you have to do is tell me. Shadow could feel the mocking smirk as he said this. I want you to... Yes? To... Shadow's eyes started watering. His cheeks were a deep magenta as he forced himself to speak. Bone me. I want you inside me. I want you to be my first, Sonic-oo. Sonic smirked widen as he awed in mockery to Ebony's words. I'm happy you feel that word. Sonic straightened up and retrieved a small bottle of lube from the nearby nightstand before lining his lips with Shadow's. Placing a hand on Shadow's pelvis as he massaged the liquid onto his own manhood, he then slowly pushed himself in until their hips touched. Shadow's mouth was open and a silent scream as the pain in his backside was unbearable. His arms buckled beneath him and he moaned loudly into the pillow placed underneath, tears continuing to gather at the corner of his eyes. Sonic grunted as he pulled his hips back and repeated the previous motion, leaning forward and nuzzling into the other's neck as he gradually picked up the pace. His arms now cradled his lover's chest. Oh God, Sonic! Shadow moaned into the pillow. He smirked as he thought of something. Do you want more, Shadow? Yes. What do you have in mind? Sonic nipped Shadow's shoulder as he reached down and wrapped his hand around the other's member, stroking it. Shadow gave out a choked moan as he raised his head. His mouth opened and his eyes rolled back. Sonic stroked him faster, driving the darker hedgehog nearer to climax. Suddenly, Sonic straightened and pulled out, stopping all of his actions. As Sonic said this, he turned Shadow over so he was lying on his back. Okay, so basically because I stopped, he was stroking him, but then he stopped before he was about to climax. That way you get it.
Okay.
As Sonic said this, he turned Shadow over so he was lying on his back, his length fully visible. Shadow looked at him, gasping for air. One of his legs curled towards him. It was a rare sight to see Shadow like this, and Sonic felt lucky. He lifted one leg over his shoulder, along with the other one, and pushed himself all the way in one thrust. Shadow groaned and clutched the sheets, smirking. The scene leant forward once again, his hands on either side of Ebony's head, and thrust into him multiple times, watching the Shadow underneath squirmed and shivered, not seeming to be able to control himself from the pleasure, as his nails now digging into the hero's back. Shadow opened his eyes finally, seeing Sonic looking back. They stared at each other, their faces mere inches apart, until Shadow propped himself on his elbows and forced their mouths to collide once again. Sonic kissed back without question. Their tongues swirled around each other in an erotic dance, separating only for air every couple minutes. Sonic's back then arched his head towards the ceiling as he came. Shadow gasped and moaned as he was filled to the brim with cum, some oozing out of his butt due to it not being able to fit anymore. Shadow came shortly after, his essence shooting straight into the air, only to come back down. Once Sonic was done, he lowered himself slightly and looked at Shadow, only to see he had been covered in his own cum, most of it on his face, and the rest trailing down his navel. He chuckled and began licking him clean, pulling out in the process. He even cleaned the entrance so he forcefully rammed into, making Shadow shiver. He finished and pulled himself up, face to face with the dark companion. Shadow seemed to be unamused as he stared back, his hand gently brushing the side of the kobold's head as they simply laid on each other. I hate you so much, Faker. I wouldn't doubt it if it weren't for your cries of pleasure earlier. And then it ends. That was the end. I hope you're getting enough footage for this.
Oh yeah.
It hurt.